And welcome back to the channel. Mr. Acolyte here, coming at you with my Season 4 review for Asuka. It's been a few days now since the patch dropped, and Asuka had a lot of very impactful changes to his kit. So now that I've had a lot of time and plenty of matches with this version of the game, I thought I would go step by step over his changes and just give my thoughts on how impactful I feel they are, whether they're buffs or nerfs, how heavy they are, and what I think about the future of the character. So let's go ahead and jump right on into this. Okay, so elephant in the room, nerfs. This man did get very heavily nerfed, so we're gonna go ahead and go through his nerfs one by one. I'll start with the least impactful and we'll go to most impactful. So starting out, he got 4 major nerfs. Nerf number 1 is one that a lot of people said they saw coming, the super. So his super cube has been very heavily nerfed. So as you can see, they nerfed pretty much every aspect of it. They nerfed how many times it hits, as well as how many times it's blocked. They nerfed the pushback on it on hit and on block, and they nerfed the recovery. So if you just shoot it out, I'm gonna hold up here. You see, it's a while now before he actually recovers. So when you first get into matches with Asuka, that's gonna be one of the most notable changes, is that after you throw the super, you literally cannot move. Right now, my frame data mod is not working, but if we do the classic jump test, this is how we would test frame data back in the day. If we do the jump test, you can see that once I do the super, Soul's gonna jump right after me. So it's still plus, but just barely. The weight of this change, I think, is pretty heavy in my opinion. This super served a lot for his kit. If you ever had like an empty hand or you just had no mana, that super was a really good way of trying to like come back or just slow the match down or just get a second to think. It still functions like that as long as you connect it. But now if someone blocks it, especially if they block it up close, you're really not gonna get very much time to do just about anything. Next up is Bit Shift Metron, also known as the Flame Cube. Now this is a massive nerf to his kit. This one hurts a lot. What they did to this one was, from now on, there is no more 5 cube. You cannot shuffle a 5 cube into your hand. In case you don't know, this cube goes from 1 to 5 or from 5 to 1. So the idea of the 5 cube was you get the 5, and then you have to spend it quickly because it's going to count down from 5 to 1. It'll lose utility over time, whereas the 1 cube gains utility over time. So they deleted the 5 cube from the game. That's gone now. So like now you can only get the 1 and you have to wait for it to build up to 5. So that's the only way to use this card now. That is a massive nerf because the 5 cube was a big part of the synergy of Test Case 3, and it really let you sort of take a moment. Kind of what I said about the super. This was the best card in the entire deck for recovering, because when you put it out, it gave you plenty of time to refill your hand and most likely still get a turn. It was also great for getting your mana back without losing your turn as well. So now when you're in auto import and this card pops up, you're not going to be able to throw it out instantly to keep up like his insane pressure Exodia situation anymore. You're going to have to wait and let it get its charge before it gets its full utility. Okay, the next one is his other super. This is also, I don't know if people would disagree with me on this, but I feel like this one is a pretty big nerf. What they did to bookmark full order, also known as harmonics. The new mana drain is actually pretty crazy. As you can see, it goes down really fast due to the fact that the mana regen rate goes down so fast now. You really have to be extremely quick at stopping on what you want. If you linger on that screen now, your mana will just be snatched instantly. This was gonna be in the buff section because you can switch test cases, but the rate at which it depletes, I just don't know if it's worth it. So far, if other Asukas, let me know what you guys think. For me, I don't know if it's worth it yet. From my testing right now, I still just do it manually. I still just do the old-fashioned way of get into the test cases you want, put them in block stun, do it, get what you want quickly, and get out. Because now I feel like if you spend more than like a few seconds, like a second or two, selecting the cards that you want, your mana is going to be completely cooked. And this is assuming that you go into bookmark at full mana. If you go in at half or anywhere below full, it's extremely dangerous. And last but not least, of course, by far the biggest nerf to his kit, the recover mana continuously, the green card. So what they did to this one is, first of all, they shortened the duration. So I'm trying to get my mana down here real quick. Well, not that low. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop it, and you can see that the duration has been drastically decreased. So there you go. That's as long as it lasts. It used to last at least, it lasted about 3 times as long before. Now you only get it for a couple of seconds. So the other thing about this is, if you take any sort of damage, let me get my mana down so you can actually see it. If you take any sort of damage now, it completely stops, even if you're blocking. So if someone is like constantly pressuring you, it's going to stop. And because the duration is shortened, basically if you get put in a block string, just assume that you're not going to get any mana back, because the timing is so short. And especially if you get hit, it's not going to outlast anybody's combo. It's only a few seconds. This right here is by far the biggest nerf to his kit, because what that did before was when you popped that, it kind of gave you breathing room, because if you got hit, it would go up as you're getting hit, so you would not get burned out. And as you all know, or maybe you don't, when he's burned out, he takes double damage. So there are many times where this would like save your life. Like if you had really low mana and you pop this and then you got hit, it would prevent you from getting burned out. Even if you got knocked to the wall, it might save you. And then you would get up with more meter than what you had. But now that none of that is the case, it's just a lot tougher to play him now that he doesn't have that as like an insurance policy. So with that, we've covered basically all of his major nerfs. When you put them all together, the recover mana, the Exodia super, the 5 cube, and the cube super, when you put all of those together, what it really does to him is it limits his resource management game. The biggest thing that I've noticed from playing is that resource management now feels way, way harder, especially with mana. Not having the 5 cube to rely on in order to get your mana back quickly is very tough, man. Not having that, and then not to mention you don't have this to get people off of you, and then when you do this, you're losing more mana, and then recover mana continuous only lasts like a second. So you put all of those together, he just feels difficult now. I mean, he always felt difficult, but now he feels super difficult. Not to like doom and just say that he sucks now. I don't think he sucks. I still think his strengths are still there. Sadly, his bad matchups are still there. His bad matchups still feel really bad, but his resource management just got like way, way tougher. When you play him now, you have to razor focus on your mana, and you have to make like the best decisions of your life with your cards, because if you just choose wrong one time, you're literally probably going to die. Now, it's not all doom and gloom, as he did receive some buffs, mostly to Test Case 2. We'll just say Test Case 2 got buffed. Pretty much everything we just covered was a nerf to Test Case 3. That was the most popular way to play him, so you can just say that the devs didn't like Test Case 3, so they nerfed it really, really heavily. But they did buff Test Case 2 pretty well. Let's go ahead and cover those buffs real quick. So talking about the Flame Cube again, what I didn't mention before is it does tick up faster. So now that it goes from 1 to 5 faster, the 1 card is a little bit better. It did take pretty much almost double the time. I'd say it takes about half as long now. So being able to get to 5 faster is a nice little sympathy buff, we'll call it that. It's like a nice little, you know, they're throwing us a bone there. So that is a pretty good buff right there. This next one is extremely situational, but hey, a buff is a buff, and we could use buffs right now with all those nerfs. So this one's very situational. So when you put out high pass gravity, so basically the low gravity staff, the lightning cube specifically travels faster. So its travel speed was increased only when this is out. So again, that's a buff to Test Case 2. That's pretty good. The lightning cube is notoriously slow, so it moving across the screen a little bit faster when it bounces is pretty nice. Pretty good buff overall. And also very situational, and in kind of the similar vein, low pass gravity had the IAD limitation reduced, so you can just IAD closer to the ground now while this is out. Okay, the next buff is actually one of his most significant buffs. Everything else we've covered is pretty minor in comparison, but this one is pretty huge. This is a really big buff to Test Case 2. Might be the biggest, but I saved the next one for last, but this one is pretty big. So, instant mana recovery. This card used to drain your entire hand, but now it no longer does. So when you spend this, it just gives you mana back, and you get to keep the rest of your hand. See how I'm missing some mana there? Boom, I got it back. And it's a pretty decent amount. It's not a whole lot. They did reduce how much it gives you back, but the fact that you can just do it and not lose your cards is huge. This means now that you can pretty freely recover mana in the air without losing your hand, and that is very nice, and that's a pretty huge buff. I do like that one a lot, and of all the new changes that he's got that are beneficial, I would say that one is by far one of the most impactful. And the last of his buffs that we're going to cover, which in my opinion is probably his biggest buff, is Bookmark Random Order. Now this card still does what it did before. It swaps your entire hand. So like, let's say you just have a hand that you don't like, this card would just swap it to something random completely. But what's new about it, and is actually massively huge in terms of being a buff, is that it will fill your hand now. So having a second card in the kit that will completely fill the deck is really huge in my opinion. This is really, really good. The fact that it's random doesn't even really matter if your hand is empty. So you can still use the utility it had before of getting rid of cards you don't want, but now having the new utility of filling your hand is pretty much invaluable. This is pretty much my favorite buff that he's gotten by far. Something I've gotten in the habit of doing now is to go over to Test Case 2 just to get this card, and then once I get it, swap over to 3 and spend it, and the chances of you getting like a really good hand is pretty darn high. I really like this new strategy, and I just like all the strategies that card brings to the table. Definitely a very, very welcome buff. And with that, we have covered all of Asuka's changes. As you can see, it's a very, very mixed bag. I feel like the opinion on this character is going to come down to what you believe is the weight of buffs versus the weight of nerfs. Personally, in my opinion, after playing him these last couple of days, I do think the nerfs outweigh the buffs slightly. He does, to me, feel harder to play than before, but he doesn't feel less fun. I do think he's still very fun, very addicting to play. It's just a lot more difficult to win with him, in my opinion. You really, really have to play perfectly. You really have to make some great decisions with your cards, and you really, really gotta manage your mana, like, big time. On the other hand, I do like, I've been playing Test Case 2 a lot more, and I'm like getting more comfortable with it, and Test Case 2 feels way more fun. I think the fun factor of Test Case 2 has gone way up, but the fun factor of Test Case 3 has kind of gone down. And Test Case 3 is how a lot of people, myself included, played the character. So it's definitely a mixed bag. I would love to hear what some other Asuka mains think about this, or anybody that plays the character at all. Like, what do you guys think? Be sure to let me know what you think down in the comments. I know that Season 4 is very, very spicy right now. People have a lot of takes, but I'm just kind of taking it one step at a time and just focusing on my characters, you know, one at a time. So yeah, definitely let me know. Overall, my main takeaway is that he's still fun. I don't plan to drop him. I'm going to keep going with him. I want to keep getting better and better at this character. I think he's super fun. It seems Arxis doesn't like him. They created him, but they don't like him. But I don't plan to give up. I'm going to keep playing him and keep enjoying the game. Next character I'm going to do a review for is Zato. I'm looking forward to diving into his changes. Now that I've put a lot of time into Asuka here, I think I'm going to do Zato next. So if you're curious about that, keep an eye out on that. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss anything else. I'm also going to be doing a guide on Asuka. I should have said that. I'm planning to do a full how to play Asuka guide. So if you're interested in learning how to play Asuka, stick around for that. So definitely make sure you're subscribed. Leave a like if you enjoyed this. And as always, you guys have a good one, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.